Yeah, I guess now you guys are tired. I'm not tired, so there's some kind of envy. But I hope I will try to wake you up with a different topic. So this is related to like a long-running research program that I have been involved for a long time. And it is direct application of the first kind of models I have talked about and their extensions to new directions, all right? So it will be about kidney exchange mechanisms. And most of this work has been done, I mean, almost all of it is done joint with my co-author Tayfun Sönmez. And many of it has been also done with Alvin Roth. There's a series of papers. Today I will talk about these ones mostly. However, there are other new work which is, but I guess for the new work to be understood, we need to understand these ones first, and on top of that you can read the new work. So this will be a matching problem, but it has very specific application from the medicine. So I will have to make an introduction about some medical facts before I can motivate this problem. Okay, so transplantation is the preferred treatment for the most serious forms of kidney disease. And on a bit more than 1 year ago, when I checked last time the deceased donor waiting list queue, there were 96,600 patients waiting for a deceased donor kidney transplant. I heard that this number is more than 300,000. Maybe they are not actively looking for a kidney transplant, but there are people who are eligible for a kidney transplant, 300,000 in Japan. And to see the severity of the shortage, in 2012, 34,800 new patients joined the queue, and 10,850 of these received deceased donor transplants. 5,000 of them received living donor transplants, so a total of about 16,000 received transplants. 4,400 died while waiting for a kidney, and 8,300 were removed from the queue for other reasons. They didn't die, but they became ineligible. They somehow, maybe their condition improved, etc. So if you sum that up, those numbers up, you will see that there is a 28,000 exits from the queue and 34,800 entries. So about almost 7,000 people were added. And when I started working on this project, the number was less than 50,000 in 2003. So clearly there is a huge shortage, and buying and selling a body part is illegal in many countries in the world, including the United States. Okay? So National Organ Transplant Act of 1984 and amended 2007 in the United States makes it illegal. And World Health Organization has condemned the practice of buying and selling organs. And there are several objections, and donation is the only source of kidneys because of that. Okay? And you can make this example for other organs. Okay, this is about kidneys, but you can think about lung, liver. We have all severe shortages. Heart, all organs have severe shortage. So for donation, what do we need? Basically, we need two kind of tests. One is blood type compatibility test. So I know that Japanese know blood types very well. That's what I heard. But let me review it. So there are 4 blood types: O, A, B, and AB. And O blood type can donate to all blood types, while AB can only donate to itself. A can donate to itself or AB. B can donate to itself or AB. So as in the picture, we obtain a compatibility graph which is a partial order, if you wish. So let's call this donation partial order. So O is the maximum element. O can donate to A or B and B. A and B cannot donate to each other, they're incomparable according to this binary relation, but B can, either can donate to AB. Okay? So A can donate to AB and B can donate to AB. So we have this kind of a relationship. Well, there could be, for different organs, there could be other this kind of partial order relations. So blood type compatibility is the most basic one and it's valid for all organs. In some cases, some of them could be cured by drugs, but the long-term survival of the patients may be shorter if you give blood type incompatible organs. Okay? Or it would be very costly. So when we started in 2003, blood type compatible donation had to occur, otherwise an organ couldn't be transplanted. So for certain organs, maybe technology advanced, but still this is a very relevant concern. The second type of test is another type of compatibility. It's called tissue type compatibility. So basically this is just a picture of a human, from the human genome, okay? A certain part of a chromosome which determines the tissue type of people. Okay, so for kidneys, actually there are many, you see different genes, or they're called antigens, okay, human leukocyte antigens. These are all each determined, they get different kind of proteins there, and that becomes your type. But for kidneys, only 3 of them are relevant. A, B, and D are, these have nothing to do with the blood type, those A and B's, okay? So A gets 25 different values, around B gets something like that. DR gets two or three different values, meaning that different proteins. So you get a person's tissue type would be determined out of 25 times 25 times 3 different possible combinations. Okay, but everybody has 2 of them, so you gotta square it, because one you get from your mother, one you get from your father. So basically finding somebody exactly of your tissue type is almost impossible. It's 1 in a million or less, kind of, depending on which kinds you have, possibility. In Asia it's more common. You can get more easily because the diversity is less in those numbers. For African Americans, where the humanity was originated in Africa, that's much diverse. Okay? So these are some little facts. But luckily, we don't need an exact match to get an organ. And for many organs, even this may not be relevant. You can clean some of these. But there are some preformed antibodies on people's body, which may have occurred over time through nutrition or through blood transfusion, or if the wife is the patient, she may, if she carried a baby from the husband who is a willing donor, her body may have generated some antibodies against the tissue type of the husband. Okay? So at the end of the day, these antibodies, if these antibodies have formed against the donors, one of those 6 different antigens, then you have tissue type incompatible. And this is determined by what's called the titer level of a threshold. You measure in the plasma or in the blood what is the level of those antibodies. If it's below a certain amount, then you're okay. It's fine. You can make the transplant. So for all practical purposes, for theoretical modeling, maybe in reality you have to exactly measure these in the exchange. But for an outsider, this is almost like a probabilistic event. It's about a 10% chance that, for a 11% chance that a random donor will have an antibody, relative patient will have antibody against the HLA, the antigens of the donor. But if it is heterogeneous, some patients are more difficult to match, some patients are easier to match. All right? So let's keep that as a probabilistic event in mind, about 11% chance. Of course, if we are doing the real matching, we have to find out exactly what are what, and we have to have a 100% certainty at this For example, in Australia, they can measure this in the molecular level, and it's 100% you will determine in the matching stage who will get it, who are exactly tissue type compatible. Okay, but anyway, the organ never is wasted. You don't have to worry because a blood test immediately reveals before the transplant whether you have these antibodies or so you don't have to be worried. Just you may incorrectly match somebody, and you have to do matching again if you realize that. Okay, so you don't. That creates an institutional barrier to overcome to determine, depending on how precise this test is. For example, in the US, they are, I would say, they are not very precise because different centers use different technologies. They are very autonomous. So for one, it could be compatible. For one, it may be incompatible. But for like smaller programs like Australia or Japan, this could be measured very easily. Okay. So we have three kinds of donation technologies. One is disease donation, live donation, and the third one, which I will talk, is the live donor organ exchange. So what is disease donation? So this is basically a centralized priority allocation system, and waiting time is almost always prioritized because these are the people who denoted in their driver's licenses, for example, if they pass away and if their organs are available, they would be willing donors. Okay, so they are considered as common endowments at the end of the day, and then this is allocated through a centralized system like civil dictatorship, almost like a civil dictatorship. Since it's dynamic, we call it first in, first out. But there are exceptions to first in, first out. There are points you can collect, which is not exactly first in, first out. But for kidneys, waiting time gets one of the highest priorities you can think of. All right. Well, the second means of donation is live donation. Everybody has two kidneys, so without any very few complications, you can donate one of your kidney and have a perfectly good life. Okay, but still it's a costly event, so usually people do not come forward and donate. So this is more like a private ownership. So I have a donor who would like to donate to me, but nobody else, and he wouldn't donate if I wasn't there. Okay, and it is known that live donor, the quality, the survival of a live donor kidney is almost twice as long as a deceased donor kidney. So live donation, unlike some other organs, is the most preferred thing. Okay? For many other organs, they are equal, deceased donation and live donation, but there's a clear advantage of live donation for kidneys. So, but since you have only a few donors, maybe one or two willing donors, there's a good chance that they will be incompatible with you through blood type or tissue type. And in that case, what you do, in the past, what happened was these people went home, they were unutilized. So in 1986, a medical doctor came up with the idea of, well, why don't we create a kidney registry for incompatible donors, and now we can create exchanges among incompatible patient-donor pairs. So a donor comes forward, he's incompatible, a patient with his patient, there's likewise another pair like that, but they can swap their organs and they will be mutually compatible. So this is a picture from the famous Mayo Clinic's website. So this is how they described kidney exchange. Okay. So the top one is a pair, and bottom one is another pair. So the donor one on the left, upper left, would like to donate to the recipient one who is on the upper right, but they are incompatible. And vice versa for the bottom, but they are cross-compatible. The donor 1 can donate to recipient 2, and donor 2 can donate to recipient 1, and that would be a good, we can carry that out. In a way, one way of thinking is that one donor wanted to save one person, but in return, he saves two persons with the help of another donor. Okay? This is a good way, I guess, to advertise exactly what it is. All right. However, there is a huge contractual problem with this from a legal point of view, because this is a donation. Since it's a donation, a donor can change his mind any point in time. So the doctors who are rightly risk averse came up with the idea about all the transplants in this kind of an exchange, a cycle if you wish, has to be done at the same time, simultaneously. But then it immediately puts a constraint because there are 4 transplants are needed. 2 of them are to get the organ, and 2 of them to put in the organ. And you need 4 transplant teams for only the simplest form of exchange with 2-way. If you have a 3-way exchange in which you trade between 3 couples, 3 pairs of that, okay, you will need 6 transplants. And if you do not do them simultaneously, this is what can happen. So there is this patient, and this is donor, okay? So this patient receives, let's say today, a transplant, and we say that this transplant is scheduled for tomorrow, and there is this patient here, and tomorrow this donor changes his mind and says that I'm not going to donate anymore. So now what happened? This cannot go through. Since this cannot go through, of course this donor will also say, okay, since my patient didn't receive a transplant, this doesn't go through. But now what happened? There is this patient and donor which initiated the exchange. So he donated, but the patient didn't receive anything. So the best this guy can get ever in the future is a deceased donor kidney if this was his only donor. And we already told you that deceased donor kidneys are much worse than live donor kidneys. So they thought that this would put the patient at harm, and we don't want to do that. Even if he doesn't change his mind, there could be complications. This patient, remember, these are sick people. They may no longer be able to receive a kidney the next day, and the rest may not go through because these guys change mind then if his patient doesn't get it. So this is a very serious concern, and this puts a natural constraint on the cycle size that we haven't considered in the housing market model we discussed this morning. So that will be the additional. That's what I was telling you, the market detail is important. This is the important detail for this kind of market. So we will have to come up with new theory, etc. to utilize to this problem. Okay, here is another form of exchange which was utilized quite a bit in the New England when we first started this. So this is very much, it goes like that in the picture. So what happens, think about the top, only the top pair, okay? So the top pair says that, so the one on the left is a recipient, the one on the right is the donor for the top pair. So the recipient says that, or the doctor says, look, okay, my donor is incompatible, I'm willing to get a deceased donor, and it's fine with me. And what happens is that he gets a priority on the deceased donor wait list in return, and that the first donor's kidney went back to the deceased donor list. So you create the short circuit in which you get the highest point in the deceased donor queue. Since there are many deceased donors, you will surely get one in a few weeks or so, since you are at the top of the list. But then it created a short circuit. So we said that at the time, okay, this is a very nice idea, but we can make this, if you want to do this, why don't you make this chain longer? You can make this chain longer, but, and this may still work, if you wish. But we will talk about those. So this is another technology. So this is a cycle. Now this is not really a cycle, okay? So the first patient gets a priority. The second patient gets a live donor, the third patient gets a live donor, etc. The last patient gets a live donor, in return donates back to the waiting list. So that's the idea. So this is somebody in the waiting list gets this donor. Alright? So what is kidney exchange as a market design problem? So in the early 2000s, basically market designers observed that these 2 types of kidney exchanges conducted in the US, these were, and these market designers being me, Typhoon, and Al Roth, they were very much like these chains in the, house allocation problem we discussed this morning for allocation in the you request my house, I get your turn algorithm, and the cycles that you observe there. So once we had this analogy, we immediately started to work on this idea because less than 10 exchanges were done in the whole United States in 2003. Okay, then we came up with some algorithms, mechanisms, and we utilized these different institutional constraints over time. And we were lucky, I was fortunate that we established basically, we had the establishment of two main, at the time, two of the three main regional exchange houses. One was in the central United States in Ohio originated, one is in New England, and the third one being the Johns Hopkins was a very big program. We just sent them our papers and they also began to do a similar kind of system. So all three somehow we were lucky to influence all this, and later on in 2010 this New England program dissolved itself in the national program which started, which I will a bit talk about that too, and the challenges there. Okay, so basically there are, I would say, 6 issues about important issues about organ exchange. It could be kidney exchange as we are talking. First of all, just the organization and optimization needed for kidney exchange. Then what do we lose because of this institutional constraint if we constrain our cycle size, okay? And then we will talk about other important innovations needed which require new kind of theoretical tools to be developed. Okay, so let me begin with a very easy example. You will immediately see that. But this was also we had to explain this to the medical doctors because usually they don't think very. They really do very complicated surgeries, but they don't think analytically like maybe we are used to thinking. So think about these 4 pairs, and these 4 pairs we put an edge between them if they can mutually exchange their kidneys. So each of these edges represents a two-way exchange, an exchange including 2 pairs. Okay? So if you make a mistake and if you don't realize pair 3 and pair 4 are there, and if you choose the middle exchange, you basically may have killed 2 people. Okay? So an optimization would require you choose the top and bottom exchanges so that you get, I guess you see an idea, you see a pattern here, there is a middle exchange here and you have the sides. So you've got to be just clever to collect the data for pair 3 and 4, form a big system, this graph will look much richer and you will choose the optimal exchange. The objective is basically just maximize the number of transplants, as simple as that, okay? Because at the end of the day, if you put additional constraints like, let's say, welfare maximization, like life years, like health economists like this, the quality adjusted life years, etc., this may create some problems because not all doctors agree with that. So it's important to find a common denominator that everybody would agree, like saving the maximum number of people is a good objective in that sense. Okay? The second thing we talked about is larger exchanges are important, actually, but you don't have to go too much, especially 3-way is important, and you may practically, if you have a very large pool, you may actually let go exchanges bigger than 3-way, which I will talk about. So that's going to be a very important, this was a very important breakthrough, so that we realized that, well, you don't have to do these 4-way exchanges, 5-way exchanges, just focus at least, just include this, 3 ways, but you don't have to worry about 4 ways and bigger exchanges. Okay? So here's a different kind of chain that I talked about. Okay? So this was, instead of the deceased donor donating to the top guy, there are these people who come forward. We call them actually non-directed donors or good Samaritan donors. Just they want to donate their kidney to somebody, it doesn't matter. So in the past, what happened was that this donation directly went to somebody in the queue. This donation was directly went to that person on the queue. Okay? But instead, why don't we just give this to these recipients, pairs that we have, these incompatible couples. Let's begin a deceased donor queue, give it to the first pair, the first pair donates to the second pair. It's almost like a clause, but that donor doesn't have an intended recipient, so it could be anybody in the waiting list, the last person can donate. Okay? So this is easier to make because this compatibility is easier, and there is one other benefit for this. Actually, it turns out that this can be as long as possible. Okay? And you don't have to have this simultaneity problem. So that was kind of a important, like a breakthrough in terms of the ideas for us at the time. So what happened is the following. So they reveal their names. Usually they don't, but this was such a breakthrough. People revealed their names. So Mr. Matt Jones, who is the first person in this picture, is a Good Samaritan donor, a non-directed donor. He came forward and he said that I would like to donate one of my kidneys. Okay? Then the first pair who were incompatible, we were able to find a match for her, and then for him, so he donated to the first couple, so on and so forth. These pairs continued, and not all these transplants were done at the same time. And what did we lose? Why were we able to do that? Because here this is actually, I guess the problem is clear here. In a closed cycle, the real problem is one patient may give up his donor before receiving a transplant. That's the problem. But here you don't have that problem. Here, the person who initiates doesn't have a patient. So we don't have this problem that this cycle will not close. So he's going to donate. He will go to another patient. First the patient receives, then the donor, if he wants, continue. If that one decides to continue, he can continue. If he says to back out, then he may back out. Nobody says anything. Alright? They can change. But the worst thing would be, remember, in the past, this donor would donate to the deceased donor waiting list. The worst thing would be he would save one life at the time. He would again save that one life. That's it. That would be the worst thing that happens. So now simultaneity suddenly became not a problem. So now actually we created, so Dr. Reese, the doctor in Ohio program, so the last person, the last donor in this list, she's called a bridge donor. So she acts as an altruistic donor maybe for the next match round. She may change her mind, but it turned out nobody changed their mind. So actually there was this social responsibility. The feeling of social responsibility was much more than what we thought, much more influential. I believe, out of almost 200 transplants done through these chains in the United States, maybe one person ever changed his mind or her mind and backed out, and they didn't back out. So now currently half of the transplants in the US use this technology. So we have the cycles, and on top of that these chains which don't have to be closed. So you are basically finding just a single match. So that's easier to find. Okay. And the fourth point is including compatible pairs. So depending on the time, I want to come back to this later on, okay? So because currently these people who participate in exchange are incompatible people, okay? Because if they were compatible, this donor would donate to the patient and they would be outside of the exchange, because many people have strong risk aversion to receive from an outsider a kidney, because their family member is donating. And also there's a psychological effect for that person that he is donating to his loved one, not a stranger. So almost very few compatible pairs participate. But I would like you now go back to this donor blood type incompatibility issues. Let's do a very simple back of the envelope calculation. Okay, we have these 4 blood types O, A, B, and AB. Suppose we are randomly, so these are like wives and spouses. We are randomly matching these people together, and we are creating a couple. Okay. So basically, we will get an OA. So this is, let's say, the O blood type spouse and A blood type spouse. Together, they will be matched. These are the most common blood types. 45% of the US population and 40% of the US population in these blood types. So there will be a lot of these kind of couples. Okay? Let's say if blood type is independent of how you get sick, etc. Well, 50% of the time this guy will get sick. 50% of the time this person will get sick. So now we will have, so let's be more careful in writing the order. We will have this kind of two kinds of pairs. Okay? So O patient A donors and A patient O donors. But blood type compatibility says that O can donate to A, while A cannot donate to O traditionally. Okay? And out of these O can donate to A's, only maybe 10% will not be able to donate because they will have tissue type incompatibility. So only 10% of these will go to the exchange, while 100% of these will go to the exchange. With a rough calculation. You see now there is too many O blood type patients, too few O blood type donors. So in an exchange, there is not much we can do if blood type compatibility is an important issue. Okay? So how do you resolve this problem if you can convince compatible pairs to participate in exchange? Otherwise, we cannot. The fifth point is, I guess, important thing is that larger programs are better than smaller programs. Although I told you, so the color is a bit off, but why is larger programs are better? Because the theoretical results I told you only work in the larger markets. Only in the larger markets we don't need more than three-way exchanges like that. Okay? When this size is sufficiently large. Alright? But if you have a very small market, or if the population is is skewed like that, you see these OAs are coming and they are collecting in the data, so they are skewing this the population toward OAs more, but these guys are much less. Okay, even having a large market may not help for these guys because there is nobody there. But in the end, you really need a large market. But for historical reasons, in the United States, first the regional programs started because there was a danger that National Organ Transplant Act, people thought that in the US, violated, could be violated by kidney exchanges. Because the exact wording is that you cannot accept an organ for valuable consideration, in return of a valuable consideration. So they didn't write money, you cannot buy and sell, but valuable consideration is maybe you pay money, you buy a house, you buy a car in return of a kidney, but maybe you give a kidney in return of a kidney. So it wasn't clear that this kidney exchange didn't violate valuable consideration phrase. So it took 2000 until 2007 for everybody was sure, the regional programs immediately started doing that. Look, NOTA was not written for this intention. It was clear, but it's in the federal law. So the federal program couldn't start. So now we have these regional exchanges, small exchanges, and then the national program launches in 2010. Now, national program is basically a group of leftover patients who are difficult to be matched. They come to here, and they have done so few exchanges. These bigger exchange programs have done the most of the exchanges. But they are not moving exactly together. They are not a single pool. So this is a problem. So how do we create a single pool out of that? Okay, that's a relevant question and research topic for future. Okay. So this is the progression of kidney exchanges in the US. So in 2004, we helped for the establishment of national program for kidney, New England program for kidney exchange in the New England, and this Alliance for Pair Donation in Ohio region. Since then, it took off. Actually, now there is a non-profit called National Kidney Registry. It is not a federal thing. It's a non-profit organization which does the most of the exchanges in the United States, which finds the most of the exchanges. Okay, it's located in New York. So about right now, 10%. Oops, sorry, I lost it. Okay, about 10% of the current live donations, which is the number is about 600, come from exchanges in the United States. Okay, Korea is very successful in exchanges. Netherlands is one of the biggest exchange programs, and in Europe, this has also started in England and Germany and France. They are also doing that. Unfortunately, in Japan, long ago it was decided that kidney exchanges were not going to be utilized. Okay? And there are some reasons, there are some ethical concerns. You have to really understand after several discussions with the medical doctors. And actually, well, this didn't too much affect Japan in the sense that Japanese doctors came up with very strong immunosuppressants which got rid of incompatibilities. Not all countries use them because they are very expensive. So it creates a burden to the maybe Japanese national expenditure. It creates some burden, but at the end, people, everybody is compatible. For example, this is not definitely practice in the US, where there's a private health insurance, would never pay this kind of a cleaning expense to clean antibodies from your body. Okay? First, they will say, first find a match through exchange. If that doesn't work out, maybe we will do that. And this is not a very common practice. Okay? But for other organs, this is a challenge in Japan because this blood type incompatibility cannot be cleaned as good as maybe as kidneys. Okay? So for other organs, I think it's a very relevant question, and the conference we have participated here, organized by Tsukuba University and chaired by Professor Kurino, was exactly in that direction. For other organs like lungs, etc., which and livers can be, which has other issues, other market-related market details, which are different than kidneys. I guess our consensus as economists is that an exchange would tremendously help Japanese people, which is already short in transplants. Okay, so now let me go to the more technical part of this lecture, and let's talk about how mechanisms can be designed, algorithms can be designed for utilizing gains from exchange. So I will talk about the first two points together. Okay? So here's my model, which is almost exactly like a housing market model. Okay, we have a set of donor-recipient couples. Okay, I will call them K and T. So T is the patient. I reverse the order. So K is the kidney, T is the patient. So the K refers to the donor's kidney that he can trade or he can consume himself. Okay, there are N of them. So let's say it's not dynamic yet, which is, but it could be dynamic. Okay. Now, let's say there's a subset of these which are compatible with patient I, Ti. Okay, let's call that Ki is a subset of these donors or compatible. And now we have a preference relation over the kidneys and maybe other options, other technologies like going to the waitlist if this waitlist option is available. Right? So again, we have an outcome as the matching of kidneys to the patients. Okay, but this waitlist option could be like prioritizing in the waitlist option can be received by multiple people. You can get W1, W2, W3, if you can call them like that, or you can just call them W, because in the end, not many people will go to the top of the list. and over time, since so many organs arrive, you will immediately clear them. Okay? So a mechanism in this domain is a systematic procedure to select a matching for each kidney exchange problem denoted by these preferences. So I denoted my preferences by Ri. There's a reason for that. I didn't use the same script before because we will often think them as different from the housing market problem. There will be huge indifference classes. Many of the organs will be compatible. So if you can wish, there are two extreme models in which you have strict preferences, okay, and the other one is there are all compatible donors are indifferent to you as long as they are compatible. So this is like the dichotomous model. 0-1 preferences, either you are compatible or not, and these are the other extreme strict preferences. Maybe you like younger donors, for example, the age, or how close their tissue match. Medical community is actually, I mean, clearly, you would, as economists, we know that the richest version, maybe this one, will have, we'll be able to capture with indifferences, etc., the correct preferences. And people have done this estimation and they have found what are the trade-offs of different features of the donors on the survival time. But medical doctors don't want to be that specific because many centers have different ideas. Although there is empirical evidence, that empirical evidence is maybe collected from a certain population which was treated with certain drugs, etc. So in a way, they want to be as flexible as possible. So we actually done most of our work in this framework where we assumed we have 0-1 preference. As long as you're compatible, you're fine. We're all trying to find you a compatible pair. But this can be enriched, like I said, okay, for future. So that could be, and there are some papers which find some combination of these two extremes, right? So our first model, we started working on without knowing too much of the details, and we assume that there is no cycle size constraint. So this is the part we didn't know of, that all transplants should be done at the same time. We had a large, so all cycles can occur at the same time, and we assumed, as like very naturally, we saw these medical studies. We said that valve preferences, you can create them. You can order the compatible kidneys according to some properties, like maybe how close the tissue match, right? My tissue type, and maybe I want to prefer to get it from my twin brother who has the exact tissue match instead of some strange, all right? So we assume this other extreme, and in a way we also allowed this W option, the waitlist option, which turned out to be only utilized in New England. And now it's not done much, that option, and there's a reason for that. So basically we came up with an algorithm to do that. So as you see, this is very much related to all the papers I discussed today. The house allocation with existing tenants model, the Shapley scarf housing market model, and the other results about incentives and this core property proven by Alvord and Roth Postlethwaite. Okay? So now I'm not going to be very formal with this mechanism because the idea is very similar to you request my house, I get your turn algorithm, but there are some differences. Okay? So now we have the cycles. At the outcome matching, you can decompose every matching into these cycles, and you can decompose them chains which are generated through the waitlist option. Or if you wish, replace that waitlist option with this Good Samaritan donor. That Good Samaritan donor, non-directed donor, if there's a non-directed donor, he's generating a chain. So every matching has this kind of a decomposition. Okay? Look at the outcome, allocation of the compatible kidneys to patients, and look at the outcome. All of them will have cycles or chains which end at this W option. Okay? This will be how they would look like. All the allocations. Okay? So now, so these are very important in the sense that, so there could be trivial cycles where one agent is matched with his own kidney. So this only means that if they are compatible, this kidney goes to this patient. If they are incompatible, they opt out from the system. Maybe they will participate in a month or so in a different exchange. Okay, if you wish, you can see that. So this will be, that could be some this trivial. So we are very agnostic about whether compatible pairs are there or not. They can participate. They may not participate. That's fine. So it's a very general model in that sense. The only non-general part is that we only assume strict preferences here. So we don't have the indifference classes. All right. Okay. So cycle, you know. So I'm not going to go over it. Cycle is an ordered pair of donor-patient pairs, where each patient points to the donor of the next pair, and every donor points to his own attached patient, his intended recipient. Okay. Since we have strict preferences, no two cycles can intersect, and okay. So that's important. And of course, since we double counted donor and patient, they're all even size because of that. And the chain is like this. So whatever that W option is, we initially intended the deceased donor option, the waiting list, the top of the waiting list option. But it could be, like I said, a good Samaritan donor who is unattached, is where it ends with the W option, and then we have a chain where Tm points to W, Km, his own donor, points to the patient, so on and so forth. Each pair donates to the next. Points to the next pair in the system. Okay. But when I'm going to run the mechanism, although in the outcome, this will be a unique path like that. When I run the mechanism, I will ask the patients point to the best option available at that point. But when that happens, we will either have a cycle at like the top trading cycles, or you request my house, I get your turn. There could be two objects. Okay, either there will be a cycle or a tree, W tree, like this. Okay. So the W tree means that everybody ends at W at the top. Okay. But so each of these I will call a chain. So this is a chain. It doesn't have to be the longest chain. This is a chain. Okay. So this is one of the longest chains. Okay, all of them. But I will, since this is very much the top trading cycles idea. When we are pointing to the, when we are running the mechanism, the algorithm, what's going to happen is that we will have to stop. You have to fix some of these transplants. So what I will do is, I will ask their preferences. So why is this private information? Well, it turns out it is not, but we thought initially that this was private information, that people had different preferences that we cannot really observe over the kidneys. Well, actually they do, they still do. They may have distance they may have some other preferences other than medical reasons. They may have some preference, but they report it, their doctors report it to the system. Now the system is going to run an iterative algorithm like the top trading cycles. We call it top trading cycles and chains because of this. Okay, so everybody points to their top choice kidney option according to the list, the preference list they submitted. Now there could be two objects. Either there will be a cycle or a W tree like this. Okay, if there is a cycle, clear this cycle by assigning everybody along the cycle the kidney that they are pointing. So there's no size constraint. But if there is no cycle, and then repeat the procedure again with the remaining ones. Just remove the cycle. And now some of the people will have to point to new places because they were maybe pointing to the cycle. Repeat it until no cycle is left. It means that we have these W trees. So each agent initiates a chain. Now I have to use a chain selection rule. Use a rule to fix a chain. It could be the longest chain, fix the longest chain. It could be the shortest chain, fix the shortest chain. It could be some other priority order. It turns out if you use the priority order idea, that will be you request my house. It's identical to the you request my house, I get your turn algorithm. Let's say we ordered the patients according to some external priority order. Maybe the severity of their disease or how difficult to... so these guys are not homogeneous people, right? They have different blood types, they have different sensitivity levels to the tissue types. So maybe one sensible thing is using the more difficult a person is, the higher priority he has to match. Okay? So what I will do is, let's say in this list, K3 is the highest priority. So I'm going to stop my chain at this point. So I'm going to fix it here. Okay, so this is if T3 is the highest priority, my chain is fixed like this. Sorry. Okay? So in this case, T2 can no longer point to K1. Okay, because this is fixed like that. So he will have to point to his next top choice because K1 is going to T3. That's what fixing means. But people can point to K3 now because that's up to that point I fixed it. In the future rounds you can do that. It turns out that this is identical to you request my house, I get your turn algorithm if you use this priority order. But like I said, you can use other things besides that. Alright. So in our first, so this is the exact description. Okay. In our first mechanism, in our first paper we proposed this model. It's analogy to house allocation model with existing tenants. And then we propose these W chains, how you can, and different rules like the minimal W chain, longest W chain, etc. Or the priority based W chain selection. Okay. And it turns out that so we were able to identify 3 of them which were incentive compatible for the patients. Not all W chain rules are incentive compatible, and it's easy to see from this graph if we go back. So let's say we were using, suppose we were choosing the longest W chain. That was our rule, okay, at a point. So that's not incentive compatible. Why? Because T4, so let's say there's another one here, okay, T6, K6, okay, so we choose this longest one. Okay, this W chain is chosen. Okay, now what's going to happen is that T4 can no longer get can get K3. Okay, but maybe his next choice was K5. Okay, if he pointed to K5 instead, these two would have the exactly same length, the one that I draw and this one. Okay, they have the exactly same length now, but maybe by changing, maybe he has a priority, for example, in that case they have the same length, well, he could have received K5 instead of pointing K3 if he pointed to K5. But now K5 is already gone. It's gone to, he not only misses his top choice, he misses his second choice as well by not saying K5 because it goes to T6. So it's not, you don't want to choose the longest one, okay? Although it may look like that's the way to maximize number of exchanges. So here we are not really trying to, at this point, maximize the number of exchanges. Okay? Now, these mechanisms with these W chain selection rules, there are three different one of them, you can look at them, makes a domain strategy for the patients reveal their preferences over available kidneys. Okay? But like I said, this turned out to be not a very important concern because the doctors can basically immediately tell the preferences by their blood type, their requirements. So this is not, there's no information, asymmetric information problem here. But there is a more important asymmetric information problem. A patient usually, many times, may have multiple donors who are willing to donate. Father, mother, sister, brother. Okay? So instead of bringing only one donor, actually you would like them to bring all of their donors to the system. But with the following condition. We are going to only get one of your donors. Don't worry. We are not going to get all of your donors. Just bring as much as you can. And we'll just choose one of them for you if you can do that. Alright? And you can immediately, you can think about a system in which by not bringing some of your donors, you may just actually increase your chances of being matched easier, okay, to a higher system, to a higher donor, a better donor, okay. But it turns out that I can modify this mechanism. So here only I talked about pairs, but I can write it as Ti, Ki1, Ki2, Ki3. So here's like 3 donors, for example. I can again treat them as a single entity. Now, as long as I am compatible with one of them, I will point them. It doesn't matter which one, we will determine in the end. Okay? So it will be exactly the same problem. People are pointing, but since I'm treating them as a single entity, it will create, and we will have more chances. Of course, the more donors you bring to the system, the more people may point at you. Okay, so that's, maybe it doesn't directly benefit you, it looks like, at least on paper. It turns out that actually it can benefit you, because if you didn't bring Ki3, for example, what happens is that maybe this guy would have pointed to Ki3, but now since you didn't bring him, this guy is not pointing at you. But this guy may have the highest priority in the system. Okay? So the W chain would have been like that if you brought Ki3. Okay? So these rules, this prioritization W chain rule, or this could be just a cycle. You may have created a cycle by bringing this guy. So it turns out that it makes it a domain strategy to bring all your donors to the system. One of these rules. Okay. Yes.
It's just my concern, like maybe in this case, maybe like because of this compatibility,
Right.
maybe blood type always going to be riskier resource.
Yes, very
So
good.
in that sense, maybe if you want to maximize the number of transplantations,
You want to see the all donors.
You want to make them really participate in the system, even
Yes.
though they can really find their partner.
Very good.
And finding a really good algorithm could be really.
So here actually they can be incompatible, or they can be compatible, right? So I'm promising them to find a better match than their, maybe a younger match than their organ. So we are actually putting it into the system. And it is individual rational because you can always receive your own, at first you can receive your compatible donor. So this system actually made it, but there is one important shortcoming of this. We couldn't implement this.
And then probably I'm pointing to the maybe dynamic problem. Over the time,
Yeah.
this blood type all donor is going to be getting smaller.
Exactly.
And then you have
So
to think
this is
about-
what is the current state of the world in the US. We have so many O patients,
I see.
very little O donors, because they don't put compatible pairs like this. Okay? It's they don't try to find a better match necessarily. Exactly. Okay, so it is also parity efficient if you do it correctly. So this is very good. Here is the solution. It turns out it is not a solution. So this is, in a way, I'm showing you the evolution exactly how it happened. Telling you. So it's a very nice mechanism, but it turns out that it's difficult. And we learned that actually we ran some simulations, and the simulation size of the cycle with 100 patients could be 6, 7 very easily you can create those kind of cycles, but because of this simultaneity requirement of the cycles, this is not a plausible mechanism. Also, we don't have that much of a, so they claim that we don't have that much of a problem among the quality of different kidneys. I think this is a mistake, this was a mistake, but at the time, we had to follow what they are saying so that they would start a kidney exchange. So the extreme case would be just looking at dichotomous preferences and the smallest size of exchanges. Okay, so we look at that. The smallest size of exchanges are two-way exchanges and dichotomous preferences. Okay, so that was the second model. Just put dichotomous preferences and the smallest size of exchanges, two-way exchanges. Okay. So that was actually, this turns out to be isomorphic to a very well-known combinatorial optimization problem known as cardinality matching problem. And there were very nice solutions by famous Canadian mathematician, applied mathematician Jack Edmonds. Okay, Edmonds algorithm. And the Hungarian mathematician Galai had a nice decomposition of how Pareto efficient allocations look like in this model. Of course, we had to make this isomorphism. It turns out what Pareto efficiency means in that domain, we had to come up with that. All right? And as a forerunner, Bogomolny and Moulin in 2004 looked at the two-sided version of this problem. It was a two-sided matching problem with dichotomous preferences. So now what I'm looking at is what's known as a roommates problem in the literature. This came from, again, Gale and Shapley's 1962 paper, which we didn't too much talk, but I'm sure Typhon talked about it. In that model, actually, they talked about this two-sided matching problem, and also this roommates problem. In the roommates problem, there are no two sides of the market, but everybody would like to find a roommate. Okay, so they have preferences over other agents, but one and only one roommate. So if I'm matched with you, you are matched with me. That's how the work. So this is but exactly our two-way exchange problem. If I'm going to get your donor, you will get my donor. Okay? So here, I guess now you are starting to see this general pattern. In the housing market problem, we have cycles as the main. And these cycles, so a matching means that this guy can be matched with this, but this guy does not have to be matched back with him, meaning that he doesn't have to receive this guy's kidney. He will be matched with this guy's kidney, so on and so forth. This cycle could be in a length. But if I restrict all cycles to be of size 2, this is the roommates problem. Okay? And the other one would be the two-sided matching problem, where you have this version where, but these guys are on two different sides of the market. Again, you have this cycle structure. Okay? It turns out that mathematically, this graph structure, nice results about incentives, existence of core, only exists for when you have this n size in the housing market, or you have this two sides of the market, but you have two-way exchange. So this is the two-sided matching problem. This is bipartite graph, or the housing market. But once you remove this, in general, you may not find good solutions. A stable allocation may not exist. Right? But now we have an advantage. All those results assume that we have strict preferences. But now I will assume you are indifferent among all the partners who are compatible with you. Okay? So now they are not strict anymore, the preferences. I guess this is a theoretical thing. So now we are back. Even if we don't have two-sided structure, we have nice results here, thanks to some of the algorithms and which were devised in the 1960s. All right? So let me show you the model and the results. I hope it will be clear. Okay? Suppose now it's the same model we had before, exactly the same model. Okay? Now what I will do is I will form a non-directed graph, not a directed graph. So instead of putting these two arrows, I will just put a single line between them. So each match is denoted by this undirected arc between. Okay? So this is what it says. So Rij is 1 if I can receive from J and J can back receive from I. So that's what I would call mutually compatible with each other. Okay. Otherwise it's 0. So I will put a edge if this is 1 between I and J, otherwise I'm not going to put it. Okay? So this is a typical look of a kidney exchange graph for two-way exchanges with just compatibility based preferences. Now each of these edges is a cycle. Okay? Each of these is a cycle. But they're only two-way cycles. Alright? So I don't put any arrows because each of them is a cycle. Alright? Now the question is, how do I choose an outcome? So I want to still choose a parity efficient outcome at the end of the day, like I did in the other model. But now my options are bigger because people are indifferent among many cases. So it's a good chance that I may not make a person worse off by changing his match because he's indifferent between many partners. Okay? So I have to be very careful whether I will match 11. Of course, if 11 is not matched, you may lose parity efficiency. Okay? If you are going to match 11, so we don't know it yet, who are you going to match? What are the possible matches you can? Because 11 is indifferent between all of these 4 matches. Alright? So that's the next challenge. So just a preview for you. Look at the graph, look at the subgraph. These are components of this. Okay? So I will call this an odd component, meaning that there are only 3 people there. And I will call this an even component, meaning that only 4 agents are connected in that component. Alright? So we are almost done with the results of this. I know you are getting tired. So I'm not going to be too much, I will be a bit loose on that. So a matching will be just defined before. The only thing is it needs to be a two-way match. So if mu I is j, mu j should be I. Okay, so if I is getting j's donor, j should be getting i's donor. That's the only construction. And we can define lotteries. I'm going to skip that. Don't worry about that. But you may want to read that. So this is a matching. I'm going to select cycles which do not intersect. Edges which do not intersect. That's my goal. But here's a challenge. Is this parity efficient? Here's a question. How do I detect whether this is parity efficient or not? Alright? As you see, actually, it may not be obvious, but this is not parity efficient. And here's why it's not parity efficient. Oops. So the orange ones were I selected in the previous graph. Okay? But look at these lines, the purple ones. Alright? Now, I was able to match in the previous matching 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 11. The others were there, so don't worry about the others. The others were already there, so I was already able to match this guy, this guy, this guy, and this guy. So I'm not changing their matches or anything. But look at that. Actually, this graph has this path, which is highlighted, has a feature such that the edges which I put X on them were selected in the previous matching. But I could have alternatively selected these other edges, outer edges. So this is called an alternating path in the literature. So you start with an unmatched edge, you pick that, you reverse the match instead of picking a match between 1 and 2. So what I'm doing is I'm picking a match between 7 and 1. Okay? So now what do I do with 2? Now this will be parity, I'm making 2 worse off. Well, no. I will pick a match between 2 and 3 because 2 is indifferent. He doesn't care whether I pick 1 or 3 match. Okay, so I pick 2, 3. But now I destroyed the match between 3 and 4. What do I do with 4? Well, luckily I can match it with 5. Well, then I destroyed the match of 11 and 5. Well, that's fine. Now I can construct this match, 11 and 13. So in addition, I was able to match 2 new people, which I couldn't match in the previous picture. Here. If you don't believe me, look at it. Okay? So these guys were not able to match. So this is not Pareto efficient. And here is a statement from graph theory: a matching is Pareto inefficient if and only if there is this kind of an augmenting path. Okay? So this also tells you a way of algorithmic construction. Begin from an arbitrary matching and augment them, alternating paths, as long as you can find these outer 2 guys and augment them. Okay? But can I do this all the time? It turns out there are some difficulties because this is not a 2-sided graph. You can end up with dead ends which close back to themselves. I'm not going to be very specific about that. So you have to consider those dead ends very carefully. So that was Edmund's contribution. He observed that whenever you are picking these edges, you may sometimes end up with these odd cycles or odd components, odd graphs. So what you do when you end up with these odd graphs, you just ignore all of them. You shrink them. You create a single node, and you continue as if this is a single node. Because these odd ones are always of this kind of structure, meaning that you can match always, if there are 3 guys in this, you can always match arbitrarily 2 of them. Either this one, or this one. Arbitrary 2. You can always match them. So what I will do is I'm going to just remember, I can match 2 of them already inside these 3 of these guys. 2 of them I can match. The third one is the problem. Am I going to match the third one with outside world or not? That's the problem. So let's forget about this. Let's focus, let's shrink this odd number. If this was 3, 2 is in my pocket. So all I'm deciding is this remaining 1, whether I'm going to match or not. So now I'm back to this world. So whenever you encounter this, so this was Edmund's algorithm. The idea is whenever you get an odd, this kind of odd thing, you just shrink it to a singleton, and you do this augmenting path idea. Whenever you get this odd end, you just shrink it, so on and so forth. Then at the end, once you find, you realize in the final matching, there is no more augmenting paths. So this final matching is Pareto efficient. You're done. You go back and then you open these ones, and you again, like I said, if there were 3 people, you can always match 2 of them internally, so you don't have to worry. Just match those 2 of them. You determine. Right? So that was a very, very elegant, very nice algorithm. Can be used to find Pareto efficient matchings. Okay? And actually, there's a way you can find all Pareto efficient matchings using this. You don't have to, if you wish, but you can by changing the alternating paths you augment, because there is no unique one. There are many of them. If you choose a different one, you may end up with a different Pareto efficient match. But what is important here is that here, actually, Pareto efficiency is equivalent to maximizing the number of transplants. So welfare optimum is the same thing as Pareto efficiency in this problem. So you have to use some matroids, etc., to prove this result. So I'm not going to prove it here. Okay, so this lemma would not hold if we had 3-way exchanges. Here is the reason. Suppose, so forget about, so let's go back to 3-way. To represent 3-way, we still use arrows. So these 3 guys would have created exchange, or these 2 guys would have created exchange. So this is our 2-way. But now 3-way is allowed, so this is 3-way. Okay? So there are 2 Pareto efficient matchings. One matching is which matches this one with this one, but once you take this out, you cannot create a cycle among them. So this matches 2 people. But there's another parity efficient matching which matches 3 people. This blue one. So parity efficient matchings match different number of people. Possibly if you have 2 ways or 3 ways. But with 2 ways, it turns out the trade-off of not matching one person is always one person. Okay? So it turns out you can, maximizing the transplants is equivalent to parity efficiency. Yeah. So now I guess you are clear from an economic point of view, also maximizing transplants makes sense because it's equivalent to parity efficiency in this domain. So this Edmonds algorithm finds maximal matchings which are equivalent to parity efficient matchings. Okay? Okay, we are done with this. So this is the theorem. A matching is efficient if and only if there's no augmenting alternating paths that I discussed about. And what are some mechanisms which would make it incentive compatible for people to bring their all donors? So again, I modeled this as one person, one donor, but you can create the same graph with one person and all of his donors. Okay? The graph would be identical. Instead of having a one donor, you can have multiple donors in each node, which is fine. You don't have to worry. So here's a mechanism. So this mechanism is exactly a rule. I'm not giving you an algorithm yet. So algorithm is unspecified, but this is a rule. Okay? So algorithm is actually quite involved, so I'm not going to talk about the exact algorithm to find the outcome. But here's an idea. Okay? Let's prioritize these patients again from maybe the top priority patient to lowest priority patient. And this is my mechanism. The rule is specified as follows. Priority 1 patient will be matched. So I'm not determining a matching. I'm determining who will be matched and who will not be matched. The algorithm determines the match. Okay? So I will match the highest priority patient if she is mutually compatible with somebody else, if there's a two-way exchange. So for sure I'm going to match her. I repeat it. Priority K patient, VK, we will match her if and only if it is possible to match her in addition to everybody I committed before. So my algorithm, this kind of an idea is known as greedy algorithm method in operations research. Well, because all priority algorithms are actually greedy in that sense. But this is what I'm doing. I'm partitioning the agent set into 2 as I go along. Okay? So I look at the number 1 agent. Is it possible to match him in a two-way exchange? Yes. So I have 2 bins. These are matchables. These are unmatchables. So if one can be matched, I put him in the matchable bin. If there is no way to match him, I put him in the unmatchable bin. Okay? Now I look at 2. Is it possible to match 2 in addition to everybody in the matchable bin? Okay, there's a way to determine that. Actually, there's a beautiful theorem by Hall, 1935. This exactly can be used to determine this, whether this is matchable or not. Okay? So you put them in this bin if it is possible to match them. If not, let's say if it's not possible, I put 2 here. So now 2 is ignored. There's nothing we can do. Once I want to match 1, 2 we cannot match. But 3 can be independent of 2. So is there a way to match 3 and 1 together in the same matching? So again, there's a way to detect that. So if so, you put 3 here, so on and so forth. You count the agent K, now we have 1, 3, 5, 7, 8, let's say, etc., etc. And this bin is also filled with 2, 4, 6, 9, etc., etc. Okay? Now, is it possible to match K in addition to everybody here? Again, I use my test. The answer is yes. Then I put him here. No, I put him here. So I'm not determining a matching. I'm determining who will be matched. So the algorithm will determine my matching at the end of the day, which I'm not going to talk about. But this is the rule. So there could be many matchings which fits to this, and this is called the priority mechanism. There could be many matchings which matches them. It turns out that this greedy method, this method, maximizes the number of transplants. So it is priority efficient. Okay? And you can match, basically, also it's incentive compatible. It's a dominant strategy mechanism. First of all, if there's incomplete information about compatibility, if a doctor, if different centers have different ideas about compatibility, it will be a dominant strategy to tell them the truth. On top of that, it will be a dominant strategy for the patients to bring their full set of donors. It will be donor monitoring. So this was the first real-life algorithm we implemented in New England. With only two-way. But then we said that, look, so what did we do? So this is, I first talked about top trading cycles. That was our first paper. It didn't work out. We came to this version. This is now two-way paper. But we said that, look, okay, two ways are important, but also three ways are important. Okay? But as I told you, with the three ways, we don't get as clean result as two ways. Because now priority efficiency means you have to select who will die, who will live in a very bad way, actually. Okay? So we are actually agnostic. We are not saying anything. Well, they said, okay, let's do a priority mechanism with three-way. Okay? So not, in that case, we will not be able to maximize the number of exchanges, but they thought that priorities are more important. New England taught that. Okay? So we extended this. So there's no clean way of extending it. You have to use integer programming, etc. To a three-way, including three ways. Okay? So, but here is the question. So I'm going to skip all of this. You can read them. I think it's too late to discuss. You should read it. I think it's very interesting structure. If you don't know this mathematical structure of these graphs, so there's a very this is called the Galai-Edmonds decomposition. You should read all of this. I will skip that. Okay? What I will do is instead, what do we lose if we just focus on two-way exchanges versus three-way exchanges? What is the loss? Is there a way? And what should we go to? At most, three-way, four-way, five-way. Where should we stop? That's what I want to talk about. Okay? Okay, so this is exactly what you are saying. So what I will assume, I will make two. One of them is kind of a wild assumption. The second one is not that wild, but both of them together creates a large market assumption. Okay? So the first assumption is that, let's say you are a pair, a patient-donor pair. So I will use the underlying, so up to this point I didn't use the underlying blood type structure of the graph. I just used these edges just purely from a graph theoretic point of view. But there's more things going on here, because I can actually say maybe this pair is compatible with this one, maybe it cannot be compatible with another one. Just it may be not possible. I didn't use that fact. I treated such a graph as possible. So now I will use this underlying blood type compatibility, okay, which is a partial order itself. It has an interesting structure itself. Okay? Let's do the following assumption. Okay, so let's think about patients. So I'm going to represent patients by their blood types of the patient and the donor. So this is a pair. Again, a patient may have multiple donors. That's fine, but let's assume everybody is a single donor for simplicity. So this is the first one is the patient's blood type. The second one is the donor's blood type. Okay, this is the convention I will use. So nobody is confused. The first one is patient, the second one is donor. The first one is patient, the second one is donor. Okay? So because of the fact that all blood type donors will be less, okay? So this, I will call these guys under-demanded types. Because these guys, because they come up with a less desirable blood type than their own donor. And I will assume in the long run, this will accumulate over time, there is innumerable number of people like this. So whatever I do, I create the longest exchange. There is always an excess of these guys. So that's assumption 2. Assumption 1 is kind of the following assumption. Okay, it's these 1 and 2 are actually a weaker assumption than a large market assumption. But if you wish, you can just combine assumption 1 and 2. We have a continuum of agents. You can make an assumption like that. Assumption 1 says the following. Okay, no patient is blood type, tissue type incompatible with another patient's donor. So what does this mean? If this pair comes, why did they come? Because they were tissue type incompatible. Because otherwise O could have donated to A. But now this A is compatible with any O or A donor. This is what it says. So just forget about these chances that, okay? But if there are relatively large number of these guys, you will always find a compatible donor. If this number is large enough. So that's why it's equivalent to a large market assumption. These two together, okay? So is it clear? There are many of these type of guys, O patient A guys, O patient B guy, B donor guy pairs, O patient AB donors pairs, A patient AB donor pairs, B patient AB donor pairs. There are many, many of them, innumerable if you wish. And I can always find one other patient donor which is compatible with me when I come like that. So that's assumption 1. All right. So just don't read this. What is the maximum number of people in this? So what is the size of an efficient two-way matching? The one that I was trying to form under this structure. It turns out it's actually very easy. Okay, this is how you match them. This is a optimal matching, a parity efficient matching. Because they're equivalent for two-way, maximizing and parity efficiency. So A patient O donor will always save one more person. It's reverse, right? This can receive from, this can donate here. So this will point here if you wish. This will point here. Okay, so pointing and donating are reverse operators. If you wish, this is a donation operator. Yep. And there is no other. Okay, so I'm going to multiply the number of these guys by 2. Because they will all save twice of that. This is the first line. The second line, well, there is this odd couple, which is like a two-sided matching market. A patient B donors, B patient A donors. Again, we can match them, right? Because this can go here, this can go here. Okay? Well, I will match as many of them as possible. And I will match basically the twice of the minimum of the number of ABs and BAs. This is that second one. It's equivalent to that minimum. Okay? Okay, there was some excess. Well, I cannot match them because I already matched the most desirable guys. These are over-demanded guys. These are under-demanded. And now I match these guys with each other. What is left? These guys are left. I will call them self-demanded types. Okay, AA. So AA would be happy to match the same kind of AA. Okay? So that's what I will do. I'm going to match all AAs with each other in 2 ways. But there could be an odd number of them, so one of them will be unmatched. That's the reason. So this should be, I'm sorry, this is the floor operator, not, okay, it's like this. So it takes the floor of the half so that we don't have the odd number problem. Okay, that's it. So basically, I can match all of AAs except if there's odd, I cannot match one of them. This is what it is.
One more question.
Yes.
When I focus on this eight patient odd donor case,
Yes.
they're compatible with each other, right?
They are tissue typing.
Tissue type, but let's say if that's okay.
Okay.
They're compatible with
Yes.
each other. So in that sense, they don't have any incentive to help the situation.
They are not gonna
Do we
participate.
have any really good incentive device?
Very good. So this is actually the last paper, one of the last papers that I worked on that. Yes, so you cannot pay them. That's illegal. So you have to come up with incentive devices within the system. Like which are allowed. So what kind of things are allowed? Let's think about what kind of incentives are already used within the world for donation. One incentive system is like if you're a live donor, you donated your kidney, but your other kidney failed in like 5 years later. You are just immediately sent to the top of the waiting list in the deceased donor. Since in Japan deceased donation is not that common, but in the US it's very common, you will immediately get. Okay. So what we can do the same thing. So if this pair participates, but I do the same thing now for the patient. So look, as a patient, you could receive your own donor's kidney, but if you participate, you will for sure, we will immediately find you a match because there are plenty of those guys out there. I will give you this A, they're equally good. But if you are risk averse, if this fails ever again in the future, you will go to the top of the waiting list. So that's one proposal we put. So that's an incentive. Or here I model the preferences as 0-1. Maybe I will give you a younger donor. So if this is my grandmother who's going to donate, instead of the grandmother, I will give you a young person. That's another incentive.
But that sounds a little problematic. I mean, some people think.
So that could be very good. So that's actually what I said for economists, this is very normal. But for actually in Australia, for example, I discussed this with their head of the program. He said that, look, we cannot discriminate people based on age, he said. Okay? So the other one is probably more acceptable, what I said, just prioritizing people.
One reason why people don't like it, pretty much same reason that people don't like to see the money transaction in these situations.
You mean,
to some extent.
You mean the compatible people?
Right, in terms of the equity perspective.
Right.
Some people really don't like to see the monetary transaction in this kidney exchange.
Right,
Same
exactly.
reason like somehow some people are getting priority for getting already younger people.
Right. But they are not really getting. Yes, you're right. You're right. So in a way, what you are saying is that I'm giving this young kidney to these guys instead of somebody else.
Some people think that's
right.
unfair.
Yes.
Even though
Yes. But there will be always this unfairness. Life is unfair, unfortunately, and we are trying to make it more fair. So our initial condition is already unfair if you think like that. Okay. But you're right. So we gotta do this carefully. So maybe this age proposal actually we thought, oh well, this is. Right? It sounds reasonable. But maybe this live donation is used as a tool to prioritization. Well, let's use exactly the same tool and let's award the patient for his altruism. Because the patient is bringing this donor, although he didn't have to. So if his organ fails, the patient's, then we put him to the top of the list. So it's not used yet, and this requires lots of action. This is a difficult proposal to use. The reason is you have to coordinate the deceased donor list with the exchange. You've got to make this to be linked. So these are two separate systems in the US, for example, right now, especially. So that will be difficult. So you may come up with other methods, all right, for this prioritization. Okay. How are we doing with time? So I have about 20 minutes. 25 minutes. What I would like to do is that, so what would we gain if we included three-way exchange? Let's think about it. So this is what you would get from two-way exchange. Alright? I would like you to focus on the following type of pairs. Okay? So first of all, look at these guys. Okay, if it's a balanced population, you will have maybe equal number of these people, so it will be fine. But for various reasons, whose reason we probably discovered until recently, A patient B donors are much more than B patient A donors in Utku. There is a reason. Because it turns out that actually this A could sometimes donate to B. But B cannot do that. It turned out without, it's nothing to do with, you don't have to give any drugs for incompatibility, okay? I'm not sure this is the reason, but this could explain why this imbalance is there, okay? So AB is more than BA. So we have some excess ABs, okay? And also, given a population, it's a zero probability, almost a zero probability event. These two will be exactly the same number, right? Even though they are generated by the same random process. Okay? So let's say ABs are more than BAs. Okay? So what was I doing before? I was matching an AO with an OA, right? Well, instead, let's do that. Let's switch blood types. Now I will match OA with a B, OB, and I will use for a bridge. I will have to use. I'm sorry. Let's begin with BO. Sorry. So I was matching BO with an OB. Instead of that, let's use an AO for the match, OA for the match, and in between let's put an AB. Now this is balanced, you see. So what's going to happen is that this B will receive from this B, this A will receive from this A, and this O will give to this one. Okay? So this is a three-way exchange, and there are plenty of these guys, and I was able to squeeze in one AB type inside this exchange. This is more prominent if you are talking about ABO, instead of matching this with an OAB, but this is very rare. This is not gonna, you will not be able to find these guys very easily. This is about 4% chance you have AB blood type in the world. Okay? On top of that, you will be one of those fours, and you will be also tissue type incompatible times 0.1. This is 0.4% chance that you will get this kind of a person in the. So it's a very rare thing, but if you get it, instead of matching with an OAB, which is about 4% of the time you will have this, or maybe less, okay? Or it's actually much less than 0.4%, 0.16%, 0.16%, because you should also have an O blood type donor. That's an additional constraint. It's a very rare event. Suppose you have this. Instead of matching this with OAB, I can do this, okay? ABO, I could put here an AB donor, and let's say A patient. Okay, there are plenty of these guys. These are in the long side, and I could put here an AB patient. O patient and A donor. So what happened? This donates here, this donates here, and this donates here. It's a three-way exchange. So instead of this saving one under-demanded type, it saves two under-demanded types. There are plenty of these type of guys out there. Okay? So that's the benefit of three-way exchange, but this is very rare. This almost never happens. But the real benefit comes from these guys, ABs, that you can squeeze in. Alright? Which happens quite often actually. Alright? So this is what I'm talking about. This is for ABO. Okay? This is what with the AB. So you will get this, the first type, especially the first type of exchange can happen with three ways. This is the benefit, this is the real benefit. In theory there are other benefits, but this is the real benefit. A B patient O donor, instead of matching with an O patient B donor, okay? Anyway, in the long run, this is almost a zero probability event for that guy to be matched anyway. Okay, you're going to pick one of them, but that's a very small chance. You're going to match that O patient A donor, and you will squeeze in an A patient B donor, which is excess of these two-way exchanges. All right? So that's the benefit. So we can calculate that. Okay, so that's that number. I'm not going to go through that. Okay, what this does is that with three-way exchanges in total, you match all these guys with the two-way, but also you can squeeze in these ABs, this excess of ABs here, and excess of these two under-demanded. So that's the reason I add one of ABOs here in addition. So it's 3 times the number of ABOs, 2 times here, 3 times of the ABOs. On top of that, this is a three-way where you do this kind of exchange. Alright? So don't worry about the numbers, but that's what it is at the end of the day. Alright? But what about four-way? If you go up to four-way, actually you can even make this ABO more interesting use. Yeah, this is very rare. You would get an ABO. It's a very valuable pair. But with an ABO, if you get it, you can do the following four-way exchange. ABO, OA, AB, excess of those ABs, and BAB. So these two types are under-demanded. They are O patient, A donor. So there are plenty of them. There are excess of them. And this guy comes only as a remainder of this match, this two-way match. Okay? So you create that. It turns out this is the only benefit of four-way exchange in a large population. If the population is not large, you can get other types of exchanges. Okay? So that's our main result of this paper. If you have a large patient which satisfies this kind of assumptions, large patient pool, okay, take a maximal matching, which matches the maximum number of people through exchanges. Okay? Suppose there's no restriction on the size of the exchanges. Okay? So there exists a maximal matching, nu, which matches exactly the same patients that I chose, but we can. It only consists of two-way, three-way, and four-way exchanges. So basically, you can decompose this to four ways. But it's not a coincidence. There are 4 blood types and 4-way exchange suffices. If we had n blood types, that's actually our theorem, n-way suffices. Okay, that's a very nice, this combinatorial structure behind that. So now we are working on long exchange. So long exchange is different in the sense that you need 2 donors instead of 1 donor. Because you get 1 lobe from one donor, 1 lobe from another donor. And our theorem for that is 6-way suffices, it turns out. Okay? So there is some kind of this combinatorial structure with goods with 3, maybe you want to exchange 3 goods. If you're a donor, you're a patient, you want to exchange 3 different types of goods. Okay? What is the largest, what is the smallest exchange size that you can make use of the maximum number of exchanges or maximum number of people trade with the smallest exchange groups? So that's, I don't know the answer. Since it's not too much relevant for market design, but for a theoretical point of view, it could be an interesting result to see.
For the case of this lung transplantation,
Yeah.
blood type
Blood type
matters,
matters, but it turns out tissue doesn't matter. Actually, the so I actually a bit cheated in my result. In that world, if there is no tissue type compatibility, actually in the kidneys 2-way suffices. This is it. This is the only exchange you would get, ABBA. If there is no tissue, because you would never have these guys. These guys would never come. So 2-way would suffice. And you don't need an organized exchange. You can just match first come, first serve basis. You don't have to make any optimization. Match ABs with BAs. Match random. Okay? If that was the case. In the liver world, in the lung world. Okay? But if you have 2 donors, that results belongs to 6-way. And you need an organized exchange. You cannot do it ad hoc. Okay? So it has some interesting structure underlying. This blood type business brings a very interesting structure. In the remainder of my time, maybe I show you a few simulations and I will show you one more model and that's it, most likely. So what do we lose from three-way, four-way, by limiting ourselves to three-way, four-way in a realistic simulation. Here, what did we assume? We assume that there is no blood type, tissue type incompatibility with other ones. But in a real population, there will be. So let's assume, let's generate this population based on the population characteristics of people who get sick, since US data is very accessible based on US population. So what will I do? I will randomly generate 100 incompatible pairs. So these are incompatible pairs. So what does randomly mean? I will take a patient randomly. I will generate his blood type according to blood type distribution of people who get sick with the kidney disease. I will randomly match this person with his or her spouse. Okay? And then that's, since they are just spouse, they are blood type unrelated, so I will randomly generate his or her blood type according to the US blood type distribution. Now I will generate them. Then if they are blood type incompatible, that's fine. I will put them in the pool. But now they are blood type compatible, then this patient is actually, I generate them also his tissue sensitivity level according to the data, according to the who gets sick and what is. So there are people are classified in 3 levels according to the US data. High PRA. PRA is how sensitive you are. High PRA means that you are very sensitive. These are people who would be incompatible with 90% or more of the random population, even though they are tissue type, even though they are blood type compatible. So these are the most difficult people to match. There are people who are only low PRA, less than 10%, and middle range PRA, about 50%. Their average, all overall average is 11%, like I told you. But I generate this type, then I randomly see whether they are tissue type incompatible. It's a simulation. Now I compose my pool of 100 incompatible pairs. I look at, why don't we focus this line? Okay. I focus on two-way exchange. Okay. So using two-way exchange, I can, about half of these people will be able to be matched. Only two-way, using this Edmonds algorithm, if you wish. Okay? What about three-way? For three-way now I have to use an integer programming algorithm, because this was just, this number is, so these are the my theoretical numbers. Okay? So I use an integer program, and this is basically what is used in real life for three ways. And okay, oops. Okay, if I use the three-way exchanges, I can additionally match 10% more. Two and three-way together. Four-way, almost zero. Four-way doesn't help. Unrestricted way, five-way, six-way, doesn't help. You go to 60. Indeed, three-way is, you have to do three-way, because that gives a significant change, significant increase. Okay, so that's based on this actually. Now three-way is incorporated in the US and in the world for kidney exchange. They not only, so they initially thought two-way would be sufficient, but after showing these results, they incorporated three-way. Okay, and these are our theoretical numbers, so we calculated in two different ways those numbers I showed you. So in a way, I'm just showing you that they're not too bad of approximators. Okay, for approximation. That's the only reason I'm showing you this. Okay. So this 53 is not a, so for two-way, it's my numbers are too large, but for three-way, they are okay. The way I calculated them. Anyway, all right. Okay, so what happened? So this is the history. So we actually were with the head of New England Organ Bank in 2004 and a tissue type expert, Dr. Seidman. We started this NEPCA, New England Program for Kidney Exchange, and we determined, we used this priority mechanism with three-way exchanges. So we prioritize people I did the same thing using three-way exchanges, okay, including two and three-way exchanges. So, okay, if there are ties, we always chose the exchange which created maximum highest number of exchanges. How can there be ties? Because the priority classes are coarse, so we do not really have we didn't have a priority ordering per se, but there could be like children had the highest priority, for example. This kind of people had the second highest, with the people who have high panel reactive antibodies, who have high tissue type sensitivity at another priority, so on and so forth. Okay, but then we also have this the formation, which is now functioning still, alliance for pair donation. Okay, so then we advocated for this chain exchanges. So we don't have actually. So here is one thing: we don't have a really good model which incorporates these long chains with altruistic donors with small cycles of size 2, for example, or 3. We don't have a good model, good mechanism, okay, in this domain. We are only using this this integer programming basically to determine this chain exchanges. Right now, it's still what we do. At this point, computer scientists, because these problems are NP-hard problems once we have three-way exchanges in it. So we spoke to some computer scientists, Thomas Sandholm at Carnegie Mellon, actually, and his students developed, and his colleagues developed a fast algorithm instead of using off-the-shelf methods. So now you can put up to 1,000 pairs or more can be included. I think they can even go much higher to calculate. So it handles the US system, okay, with the current computer speeds, etc. Using these integer programs. Of course, if we had only two ways, we know the answer. It is polynomial, you can solve it. But once you go beyond two-way exchanges, they are no longer polynomial time, they are exponential. So the computer basically, even the best computer in the world would run out of memory at some point. What is that?
In the case of these three-ways,
it is NP-hard.
But still, NP-hard doesn't mean that you can compete.
Very good. So actually, that's what they did. So they came up with a heuristic, with a almost efficient method. It almost always works. But so these are the kind of graphs called sparse graphs. We don't have too many edges in them, so that it almost always works, but sometimes it doesn't work. Okay? And NEPCE in 2010 dissolved itself in the national program. They became de facto. Their administrator became the head of this national exchange program. But unfortunately, they are not working very well. They don't have many customers. And why? Why that's the case? Of course, there is path dependency, because the regional programs founded first, but the national program came last. But there's also a theoretical reason why we can, unfortunately, there's a negative result, which I will show you next, theoretically, that it's almost impossible to find an incentive-compatible participation house. So think about, there are two clearing houses, okay? So there's one exchange program, let's call it Center A. Center A is an exchange program itself, and Center B has its own exchange program. So Center A has 3 patients. It can do it internally, or it can participate in the national exchange with Center B, and they can pull together and create a match. Okay? And Center B has 4 patients. Right? So the goal of the national program doesn't see these patients. They only see whoever the Center B brings to the table, and whoever Center A brings to the table. And the goal of Center A and Center B, which is consistent, is to maximize number of transplants. Because that's how they earn their money, the hospitals earn money, the more transplants they do. And that's how they help the most number of patients. So they're all aligned in that sense. So each center's goal is to maximize their patients. If they truthfully revealed, this would be the graph of the compatibility, suppose. Okay? Actually, you can very easily do it with real blood types, so this can happen, a variant of that. So this is our graph, all right? So what is the maximal, so this is only two-way exchanges. If you have three-way, the impossibility still holds. Suppose, what is the maximal exchange? Well, there are several ones, but all of them will match exactly 6 patients. One example is this one. Okay, this is just an example. Okay? So one patient will be unmatched. In this case, maybe T5. It doesn't have to be T5, but this is the maximum. So this will create an impossibility result as follows. Okay? Suppose one of the patients of center A is unmatched. So there are two outcomes, right? Either one of the patients of center B will be unmatched, or one of the patients of the center A will be unmatched. Let's think about one of the patients of center A is unmatched. Or, okay? Well, I'm sorry, let's begin with center B. Let's go according to the, here. So suppose, let's say T7 is unmatched. So this is the match. It doesn't have to be T7. It could be any, it could be T3, T4, or T7. Okay? So this is an alternative strategy of center B. So center B does the following. Center B says that, okay, I'm going to internally match T2 and T3. And they never reveal this exchange to the system. Now it reveals T4 and T7. Now this system has a single parity efficient matching, which matches T4 with T5, T7 with T6. So all of the patients of center B are matched. If one of the patients of center B is unmatched, he can always make this, and it will benefit. What if center A has the problem? Well, center A, if one of center A's patients is unmatched, center A can withhold T5 and T6, internally match them, and reveal the difficult to match patient T1 to the system. In that sense, there will be a unique parity efficient matching which matches T1 with T2, T3 with T4, and center B benefits. So, in a way, this shows you there is no parity efficient and dominant strategy incentive compatible mechanism if we think about center incentives. Okay? So this is an impossibility result. And this is what's exactly happening in national exchange. Okay? All these programs internally are matching easy to match patients, and they're revealing to the national program difficult to match patients. And they are not matched at the end. Okay? So there is still open questions. What could be desirable outcome, desirable mechanisms in this case? Maybe, okay, I know we won't be able to get the full, maybe you can let go parity efficiency, or you can let go incentive compatibility. What can we achieve by weakening these concepts? So computer scientists have worked on random mechanisms, randomized lottery mechanisms, and they show that the worst case outcome could be 3/4 of a parity efficient matching. Okay? And it's not tight, I think. You can improve still. There's a room for improvement about that. Okay? So, this is the last slide I want to show. Okay? So, until now, in the kidney exchange front, I think these first 3 things have been very successfully done. Inclusion of just creating and using optimization, utilizing 3-way exchanges and chains, okay, using optimization tools. However, the compatible pairs are not included yet. Okay, large exchange programs. How do you make participation of these exchange programs? Not done yet. We have a very recent paper in which by this privatization idea of compatible pairs, we are aiming to solve these 2 things together. So that will aim the compatible pairs to participate. And we give the right of prioritization of the compatible pairs to the national program because they see that this is going to queue. So if compatible pairs come to the national program, all the other pairs come because it's a coordination game. They can create a focal point in the, so the national program can be the biggest program. So it can drive, in a way we are trying to create a monopoly here, unlike the other economic problems. Monopoly is good here. So how do we drive other firms out of business? That's the main question. Or make them less important. We don't want to drive them out of business because they come up with innovative solutions, innovative methods. So we want to make them small. They should be still viable, but we need a really large pool for it. Okay? And the last thing is dynamic optimization. Because these problems are dynamic problems. Patients come over time. So I have a paper on that, but about dynamic, like optimal rules, dynamic, what are, so now, but now in this case, the objectives are not as clear. In a one-shot problem, the objective is quite transparent. Maximize the number of transplants, or use a priority system. But what is our objective in a dynamic queue? That's the question. So I had a paper in which I looked at expected discounted number of people. So using discounting, some discount rate, let's maximize the discounted number of people matched over time, okay? And I was able to characterize the rules which would do that under certain, so the best rule may be of the following structure, okay? The best rule says the following: just match the maximum number of people possible using one of these rules, maximization, two-way, three-way, whatever, okay? Unless one of these sites are too many in the pool. Maybe we have lots of ABs, many of ABs, okay? I'm sorry, very few of, let's say, we have BAs in the system. Very few of BAs, okay? We have one BA, no AB. Maybe you want to keep this BA even though you can match it in a three-way, the way that I showed, for future. So that's the dynamic rule. As long as there are too few, just keep on to these BAs, because if this AB arrives, you can immediately match with them in a two-way exchange. But if this number gets out, if you collect too many BAs in the system, there's a threshold. If you match past this threshold, then conduct the maximum exchanges. That's the optimal rule, basically.
But those BAs can be happy with that kind of situation, like those BA pair.
Yeah, BA will have to wait. I know, but that's a centralized rule. Again, you're absolutely right. I don't think this is a realistic solution. Doctors may not agree that. Look, I found an exchange. We should do it. So it's difficult to explain to them. Look, if you wait 2 months, you will for sure get. These guys are going to arrive. They are there. We know that. But again, for this to work, you need a large, one single pool. Everything is happening in a single pool, not in a segmented market. This could work. Okay. I'm going to stop here. Well, thank you for your patience and listening to me. And I would like to thank Mori and Scuba University for inviting me. It was a pleasure.